Chris and Roberta have produced independent films, including Buffalo 66, The Virgin Suicides, American Psycho, Spring Breakers, and Chris started his career in music as the founder of Intergalactic Music, Inc. He also launched Rock Video International, which was the first company to license MTV videos for distribution in Japan, and he brought karaoke to the United States and the rest of the world. He's also been a significant influence in the art world as a dealer for works by artists including Andy Warhol, Roy Lichtenstein, Jasper Johns, Robert Rauschenberg, Richard Serra, the list goes on. And with his wife, Roberta, he is also an architect. They've designed The Invisible House, which you have definitely seen on Instagram. Roberta produces with Chris, and she's a writer, actress, movie director, and designer. She wrote American Psycho for Mary Herron. She's appeared in many films, including Trees Lounge with Steve Buscemi, and in The Virgin Suicides, in which she played Jonathan Tucker's mom. And you know John from his 30-year career as an actor with film and TV roles in The Virgin Suicides, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Ruins, Charlie's Angels, so many more, Westworld, and he is the chairman of the Boston Garden, which is going to open its third location this year. Amazing.
Yeah, fourth location.
Fourth location, and it's been in business since 2021.
Which is in dog years, in cannabis dog years, a decade at this point.
It's an impossibility. So to kick off...
But also, this is a surprise. I didn't realize I was going to be getting to sit up with these two people whom I first met when I was 15 years old in Toronto. And for those of you who don't know, this is one of the supremely cool couples in America, and probably the coolest couple in Hollywood. I mean, this is like the real deal, independent filmmaker, art team. It's such a thrill to be up here and to see these guys. So I just want everyone to know it was a surprise.
I'm speechless. Thank you. Thank you.
You were just saying you met when you were
trying to stay together forever.
You met when you were 16 years old?
Yeah, I turned 16 on the set of The Virgin Suicides, and this was their movie. And anybody who knows, I mean, if you get a script that says Chris and Roberta Hanley, you drop whatever you're doing and you pick it up. I mean, this is like legitimately one of the most dynamic couples. The fact that we're up here talking about cannabis is totally on brand for the absolute esoteric success that is this couple to my left.
Have you, the three of you, ever had a conversation about cannabis together?
No, we haven't seen each other in a decade, probably. Yeah, it was probably 20.
Well, we did like 10 minutes ago. We cut the deal, and we're starting the Spring Breakers cannabis brand with all the merch to go along with it, and we're gonna like merge the IP, and Jonathan's got more experience with the actual flavors that will be part of.
Really? You're an expert in flavor?
I'll tell you, you learn a lot surviving in the cannabis business. And if the topic of this is about, stories and narrative and expression or culture, and we're really about like a New England cannabis culture at the Boston Garden, which is obviously, New England cannabis culture is very different than Southern California cannabis culture, or Northern California, or Oregon, or Washington. These are cultures and communities that have been built around cannabis in the dark for 70 years, and each one of these little communities or cultures has different personalities and different strains and different lingo, and they are really influential in those microcosms. So you want to be able to speak to them, and authentically, which is what we're trying to do in New England with our retail, the Boston Garden, and then our brand, Lobster Pot. And Lobster Pot, we have lobster rolls. 28 lobster rolls makes lobster bake. We have a lot of fun with that, but we're totally authentic. I was nurse cradled and reared in the People's Republic of Charlestown. My father sitting in the back, 35 years at UMass Boston. He taught. My other buddy, Jay McCullough, over here from Massachusetts. Like, we're a real New England team, and we want people to know that. And this is why you see why so many MSOs have been challenged when they've been trying to build these national brands. So we're trying to speak authentically to our cannabis culture in New England. And I would caution anybody who's trying to build out like a new brand to be super aware of that, because we haven't seen a national, culture yet in cannabis emerge. But if there's anybody who's going to do it, if you know their resume, it's going to be this team right here. So if there's going to be a national brand, maybe it'll be Spring Breakers.
Well, we're thinking, it's really good to make the next Spring Breakers with a cannabis plot in a way where the girls become empowered. Because the first one was about the American dream, and the girls somehow became empowered, even though it was also about friendship and finding themselves and coming of age. But the next one, we want to include sort of maybe their career could end with them empowering themselves, doing the cannabis business and farming and doing it organically with the packaging also reproducible, or collectible.
Well, we'll do it in Massachusetts, and my company will be a part of it.
I love that you already have a business plan, that you've been here like 10 minutes and you've mapped it out. You have the entire ethos.
We can put it in a script, and then we have like this other metaverse version of marketing in a way. So we always just go right into the creative. In fact,
Well, you guys are perfect for this because you say things, and a lot of people who hear them who don't know you think you're maybe a little crazy, but you have to. But then you do it. You say we're going to build and design this house in Joshua Tree, and everyone goes, "Oh, that's a little crazy. It's going to be all mirrors, and you can see through, and the pool's going to be on the inside." And it turns out, then you do it. You've done this in so many aspects of your life. You say things that are slightly ahead of the curve, and then everybody else catches up to you. I'll tell you that is definitely the case in cannabis because you have to be totally crazy to get into this business, and you have to say things that everyone's going to say, "I don't believe you're going to be able to do it," and then you're going to have to get kicked in the teeth and chew glass for years and hope to get some lucky breaks. But
Right.
you guys are definitely the people to say the crazy thing and then actually execute on it.
Can I ask you each about your relationship to cannabis as a medicine or a relaxant or a creative tool? Are you a consumer?
Well, I mean, I have a long history of relationship with cannabis, since I was in high school. But I mean, I recall even when I was in Massachusetts at Amherst College, I put a note in all the students' box that, I got a couple, 4 pounds of California weed, and I'm gonna. And I put it in the mailboxes for everybody. I've got a really good price, and remember when I did that, Dave? And then they go, "Chris, you can't advertise that you're selling weed in the
It was like a
college."
death sentence at one point, and I remember going to a movie in 59th Street, I think, and 5th, at the Paris Theater, and having a joint meant that you would get a life sentence in prison. And so it was scary, but maybe it was better.
So, and what is your relationship? When did you start consuming?
Well, I mean, it's been most impactful in terms of the genesis of our business, which was saving a family-owned dairy farm and using cannabis as a means to get this family-run dairy farm out of debt and to be able to kind of literally save this American farm in Metro West Boston. But then it's also taken me on all these other really wonderful adventures of building a business, of kind of getting to speak to my people in my community, and getting to recognize that in other operators in other communities. And of course, you have to sample the product for the business. And, for creatives, I think, for some people it elevates and encourages creativity. For some people it does the opposite. And you have to kind of go through the fun work of figuring out how your body relates to it and how it helps bring out the creativity or doesn't. And, it's nice to start seeing that the stigma of the product is beginning to go away, and I think that's a really important part of what Hall's Flowers is doing and what you're doing in your work, Mary Jane, and certainly what we're trying to do in Massachusetts, which is a very puritanical state.
Right. And on that note, so you were mentioning, the life sentence, the punitive sentences for cannabis and the stigmas and stereotypes. What do you think the stigmas and stereotypes are that still exist that are very difficult to break around cannabis and cannabis consumption? What do you think the stereotypes
the
are?
very strong cannabis causing schizophrenia or something, triggering mental illness or something just that might not have happened. So the smaller dosage, the lesser high intensity might be good as well. That's very slow and babyish, but I did find through my lifetime that it definitely helped the screenwriting a little bit, and that if you know, you write a screenplay and you're totally not doing anything, which can happen, then at the very end you might read it and say, oh, well, I wish I had tried just one puff in the middle before Act Two. So, you know, it's been something. It definitely has been part of my creative process, I think. But so has coffee. The two together.
You know, together, coffee and cannabis, they call that the Seattle Speedball.
Right. I mean, Balzac had, you know, a ton of coffee. And, you know, Fitzgerald, it was, I think, Scotch. So.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Invisible House in Joshua Tree and how you dreamed that up as an act of self-expression?
Well, I mean, originally it was just land, and it had all these sculptural forms. And but then we brought this trailer that was on Abbot Kinney and Venice Boulevard that was like a prefabricated, and it had like fancy bathroom and speakers in the ceiling and everything. But then the community and the county said that we couldn't keep it there. We had to build a real house. So it wasn't our first house. We built one in Africa before that, and we designed some in Venice Beach. And I'd redone lofts in New York City and also in Venice. So I had this concept of reflective architecture, and I was always influenced by, grew up in New York City, like skyscrapers that look like monolithic, and then of course we're film producers, so you know, Stanley Kubrick's 2001 Space Odyssey from Isaac Asimov's screenplay. I mean...
Chris, put that mic up.
Oh, sorry. From where the monoliths are actually these alien forms that are alive, even though they look like they're made out of glass or something. They're actually aliens that come down to like civilizations that are in turmoil over there. So that seemed like a good theme, and to merge this kind of like interface of this extraterrestrial kind of shape with the land. Oh, sorry, guys.
It sounds like a great place to enjoy some psychedelics.
Well, you know, Joshua Tree, it's arguably the mushroom capital of the world, and you know, and of course, all forms of cannabis and are I mean, it's just a way of life. It's nature and mountain climbing and hiking, and I run through the hills, but everybody does that, and yeah, everybody's kind of like on their own, you know, discourse in nature out there.
Do you have a favorite cannabis or psychedelic story from your own life that you'd be willing to share with us?
You mean from that location or
anywhere, anytime?
Well, I don't know. Roberta probably is better at. I mean.
I remember in high school going to. I was in London at the American School in London, and I was staying there. And I remember going to someone's house that was two German high schoolers, and they had the room done up like Morocco or something. And they had long hair that was blonde, and then they had come back from Morocco where they had gone through customs with hash, and they had just ran because the British police didn't have guns or anything, and they were tall, and they hurdled over like barricades, and then they brought it there, and I remember doing it for the first time, and that was a shock, you know, where you speak and then the language goes somewhere else and then it comes back, and it was really over the top. But it was, you know, I think the Germans are very unusual. They know how to have a lot of fun.
The craziest like highs that used to take place were actually in Africa, because they would take the African cannabis and they would make, you know, chocolate brownies out of it, but somehow maybe it's like higher, it was more oily, the African, so it had more like CBD, but somehow, you know, people would take it and just leave the planet. And then one time we were, it was like a New Year's, and it was like, oh, like bring some dessert. So we made this chocolate brownie cake with our chef, Sammy, and we went over to this other house where we had a New Year's party, and it's in Lamu, Kenya. And at the end, everybody, like, you know, took little slices of this. I said, but this is really strong. So just don't leave it around, you know, the kids or, you know, the workers in the kitchen. Well, sure enough, we didn't completely finish. When we went out, we were like, it was like pumping, you know, the stars were talking to us. It was New Year's. We're in Africa. And everybody's going, wow, this hit you the same as, you know, and everybody, it was like we were underwater.
Those land-raised sativas
Yeah,
from
but
Africa are
then
wild.
the next day, however, you know, the manager of the house like came by like furious, and it was like apparently some of the kitchen crew like, oh, chocolate cake, there's some chocolate cake left over, and it was like, oh no, don't tell me. So they didn't know what it was, and they ate it, and like one of the guys got so high, and he'd never been high before, that he thought he died, and he called his family.
Oh,
He
no.
was dying. He spent like, say, you know, that lasts a long time when you eat
Yeah.
it that way. It was like 10 hours or something.
The
So
unexpected
for 5
edible.
You gotta watch
hours,
that
he was
African
like on
Camus.
his deathbed.
Lamu.
All of his relatives were coming to say goodbye to him. But then he came back, he lived, but everybody was pretty pissed off. It was like, we said, don't leave it.
That Durban poison will get you. How about you, Jonathan? Do you have a story of?
No, I just love this. I mean, we're in Lamu in you know, Kenya, and we're having African cannabis high in CBD, and the brownies, and the staff, and Sammy. I mean, it's just great. The Hanleys are just so great. I just love this couple.
Okay, you're invited. Everyone's invited.
Let's all go to Africa.
Yeah, it's the best country. It really is. And they have the best soil, by the way. They have purple soil. And the
I
seeds
think
for their food
they're,
products are their food, you know, they should be the food basket of the world.
I think it's going to be legalized to cultivate and export.
Wow.
It's not legal.
Yeah.
I mean, excuse me here, guys, but it's not legal to actually have it and use it. But apparently they're making it legal to cultivate and export internationally because, you know, it's a business,
Wow.
which could be interesting.
Yeah, there's so many countries around the world now that have done it. I mean, it's really.
We can't even get cannabis shipped from Cape Cod to Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket because it's federal waters. So, you know, we're starting small
Yeah.
and going
3
bigger.
miles
Can you-
out, yeah.
Huge difference between now and the beginning where, you know, people would have some pot or something like Andy Warhol or somebody, or, you know, you read about like the writers of the Kerouac period. I mean, marijuana was very difficult to get. And then it you know, the few people that got it, it changed literature. It did. So, and look at where we are today with this extraordinary event. And I've never been to one like this. I mean, I really haven't.
No, me
And
neither.
I've gone to pot stores, and I've had the local dealer deliver, you know, and it got better and better. And then, you know, there were bags of pot that were like highly dangerous to have, that were, you know, just a bag. So, I mean, this is a big change. And the criminalization, I was always a criminologist at Duke. When I went to school at 16, I was a parole officer in juvenile court. And I used to get people out of going to prison. The first step is the most important. And so criminalizing it and decriminalizing it is still the priority, because it's really, you know, not necessary to be mixed in with the criminal population and be treated in any way, shape, or form. You know, I was kind of thrilled with taxation, and that it was actually causing maybe some schools to be built and an economy to grow. And, you know, and I understand it did contribute to California, but not exactly as much as, let's say, Feinstein had hoped. And I did meet with her, like, right-hand person and asked different questions. So there was, you know, the decriminalization, I think, is a priority. our friend in the audience right now, David, who started Intergalactic with Chris. I believe part of Intergalactic might have been financed with a little bit of pop money. I have no idea.
That's a good
But
Rolling Stone
David's
story
little
for you.
contribution must have been pop money. And then eventually David was, we've got to do the comedy, by the way, about David, because he was the worst pot dealer on earth. Okay, so his first deal, he was busted. His second deal, he was busted. His third deal, he was busted. Every deal he ever did until he ran into one person who
Well,
told
that's
him
the
what to
only the
do.
ones we know about.
But the first
Roberta.
deal was the craziest in high school. And it was high school in Upper Montclair. And there was some guy in his house who stole $1,500 from you. And his dad was downstairs, and his dad was like, "What's that? What's going on? What's going on?" And he said, "They just stole from me, Dad." It was the two black kids from the school, you know, in New Jersey. And they just stole it rather than pay for it. So they go running down the steps. The father said, "How much was it worth?" And he said, like $1,200, Dad. And Dad said, "Get in the car, Dave." And then they get in the car, and the two of them chased them down, and they got, I guess, one of them brought back the money. So that was
Well, it
hilarious.
wasn't money.
But that was
They
his
took-
first drug deal.
I think they took the weed.
Yeah, they took the weed, right? Or they took the money? The weed and didn't pay for it, sorry. I would never be a good drug dealer, but anyway, I would have missed anything.
Well, I'll tell you about Hall of Flowers. I met the guy, our creative director from the Boston Garden here at the Hall of Flowers, so I have a great deal of love for this event. And saw this guy working the different ecosystem, which is kind of the most interesting thing I think about walking Hall of Flowers is you've got all these, you've got the cultivators and you've got the brands and you've got the operators, like for retail operators, and you've got the
machine
fun
to make
people.
it.
You got all these different folks coming in one place. And I found this one guy who could kind of speak to everybody and really did understand kind of this difference of cannabis culture. And I tracked him down and hired him, and he's been building out our brand in Massachusetts ever since. So I love Hall of Flowers.
Can you talk about the genesis of your cannabis business? How did it all get started?
Tell us.
Yeah, well, you know, I wanted to, my wife thinks I started the business so that I could go home to Massachusetts more from our house in Los Angeles because I love New England and love Massachusetts. It's partially the case. But kind of, you know, I think in the entertainment business, you've got to be financially conservative so you can be creatively reckless. And I have been kind of managing my money for 30 years now, since I was a little boy. And had taken a lot of different swings in a lot of different spaces, but was looking for like a big one because I got married and was having kids. And was holding on to a little bit of capital to really like deploy at the right time when something was going out from under. And was approached about cannabis in Mass and had been approached to invest in cannabis for many, many years, but was not interested in all of the regulatory problems that it looked like it was the space was facing. But I called up all my folks in Massachusetts. I've got a great network there. Everybody said this is really happening. I could save a family-owned dairy farm. I could build out a cannabis business. We pivoted into retail. I got out of cultivation. That looked like kind of a scary proposition, and I think still is a scary proposition. And teamed up with a social economic applicant, an incredible Dominican entrepreneur who had been working kind of her network in Massachusetts to get licenses. And we came together, kind of felt the same vibrations in the world, and we've built out this business together with a big auto dealer. And it's been the same startup story that any other startup in any other space has ever faced, with all the same sort of ups and downs. But I fired myself last year as CEO, and it's been like the greatest. It's been I broke no plates. I yelled at nobody. I joyfully walked out of the corner office, and now have an incredible and professional CEO.
Wow.
You're going to have, you have 4 outlets now?
Correct.
And then are you going to go to any other states or?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to be opportunistic. You've got to pivot fearlessly and find the right opportunities when they present themselves. And that's what's great about coming to a place like Hall of Flowers is you get to meet so many different people. And if you find people that you like and that you feel like you connect with in terms of how you see the world and business and cannabis, you never know where those opportunities are going to go. And the more I think you help people, the more the opportunities present themselves. So I think when you're looking at everything as a transaction, and where can I get my cut, or where can I profit from this relationship, or how from introducing people, I think you start to lose out on the bigger picture, and we are definitely coming up for a much bigger picture in the space of cannabis.
Something that I've noticed over my years of writing about cannabis is that there's not a lot of effective storytelling around cannabis in movies. Of course, we've got the stoner set pieces, obviously, that we all know and love, but it's not incorporated very seamlessly into a lot of television and film. Is there something that you think you would create in order to effectively tell a story about cannabis or cannabis consumers?
Well, I mean, Spring Breakers has a lot of cannabis in it. I mean,
That's right.
One of the characters is called Alien, and it's because he's pretty high. It's played by James Franco.
Right.
Who's in Joshua Tree right now, as we're shooting a movie at our Invisible House.
You're shooting a movie with James Franco at Invisible House?
Well, his girlfriend, Isabel Praxad, is the director and wrote it, and James Franco and I co-produced. I'm the main producer, but he acted in the movie, and he was one of the producers on Spring Breakers as well. So yeah, there's a project there. I was just with them last night, the night before. They're shooting in Joshua Tree, but I mean, Spring Breakers is. I mean, there's like, blunts and. They're smoking all the way through.
But
I
do
mean,
you
they're
remember
smoking
when-
underwater even.
It's
But
so
on
dreamy.
On the set, Selena Gomez hadn't been away from her mom on tour or anything ever before. And she was just dating Justin Bieber. And he visited. And they wanted to see the footage in the movie. And so they go to the director's house, Harmony. And then they look on the screen, and she has this blunt in her mouth. And Justin Bieber turns to her and says, "What is that?" And she says, really scared, "It's a blunt." And there was this big pause, and then it was like, "Wow, that's cool." And then the director was like, "Phew," because there was lots of blunts and things like that.
I think it's going to get a lot more normalized. I mean, it's like, that we're everybody who's here recognizes that this is the kind of end of it's like being pre-prohibition for alcohol. Like, this is all coming. When Biden talks about it in the State of the Union, when you get some sort of movement of descheduling or some sort of federal movements, this is going to be, you've got 99% of the world's capital sitting on the sidelines here. Everything's being funded by doctors and dentists and like maybe 150 family offices. So, this is so early, and you're just going to start seeing cannabis be much more, naturally, organically a part of culture.
I feel like they just had a cannabis dinner, a weed dinner on The Real Housewives, and I felt like that was sort of a watershed moment.
Sure. Yeah, I
Just,
mean, look,
what's a big deal?
we're also talking about it with anxiety or wellness or sleep or creativity. I mean, we've already just in the past few years started to kind of expand what we think this plant is capable of addressing, and people are finding their different kind of gears in it. But this is a ubiquitous stimulant or product, and I think we're selling something like $30 billion of cannabis annually in America, and that's just in the legal market. That's more than chocolate and craft beer combined.
So do you see it being sold like in Walmart and Vons?
Well, I sure hope not, as a retail operator.
Oh, sorry.
But no.
We've
But
got
Where are your stores?
they're not in Walmart.
Those companies are waiting in the wings for federal legalization for sure, but I think the small operators are really hoping that doesn't.
Well,
take
you just
place.
when you the
Sorry.
opportunity was the opportunity here is that this could be a space that with some small hand in the market could essentially be providing opportunities for those who have been disenfranchised or that have been disproportionately affected by antiquated drug laws, and we've really failed in that in such a monumental way. It hasn't just been that we haven't offered that opportunity. We've basically offered a poison pill for so many people that have gotten into the space, spent a lot of money to get licensed, and then not been supported in any way, shape, or form, and had predatory folks that have taken their businesses or have stepped in on those licenses. So. We haven't had that happen. We haven't made good on that promise yet, but I certainly think that there's ways in which we can, and again, I'm a free market, or I'm a market guy. not a full capitalist, but like a market-driven economy, and there's ways in which we can share this opportunity with small businesses and with those sorts of people that should have the first in line priority to build these businesses and be successful from them.
Well, the salespeople are very helpful, and they can tell you what is going on with each one. And so they can actually direct you to the right one.
Yeah.
But where are your stores exactly?
We're in Cambridge and Somerville and Athol in Massachusetts, and we're in Bloomfield, New Jersey.
And maybe there's a California collaboration to come, radically.
This is a very challenging market here in
Right.
California. We want highly regulated and highly enforced, and this is a highly regulated and unenforced market. And you've got folks who they spend their life savings to open up a retail dispensary or a cultivation, and then an illegal one pops up next door, and they're not paying the taxes and not going through the regulatory hurdles and not having the testing and can buy anywhere. And it's really terrible. I mean, I even feel for my friends who are who are multi-state operators who are opening in New York and trying to like actually build businesses there, and they can't. There's a store literally on the same block, selling their product, the MSO's product that they're buying from Oklahoma or New Jersey, and they're selling it in Manhattan or Brooklyn, and the MSO that's open in New York can't even sell their own product because they can't get their cultivation up. So it's just such a mess, and our politicians, as usual, are really failing us.
Yeah, and especially now with the conversation around rescheduling as opposed to descheduling, is they're trying to move it to Schedule 3,
It's
which
only
would
because it's only because we can't get some of these older people who don't understand. This is like crazy.
Schedule 1 now.
yeah.
What is Schedule 3?
Schedule 3 would make it on the same level as Tylenol or other,
Oh.
And not heroin,
and not heroin and LSD.
which is where it is now.
Right. It's currently no accepted medical benefits and a high potential for abuse, which of course
Well,
we all
aren't
know
they
is.
studying the medical benefits as well?
Yes,
aren't they?
there's lots of research around it, tons,
Yeah.
but it's very difficult with it
that
as
be-
Schedule 1.
That brings up a point, though, in terms of like whether it's organic or what water you use. But like I have a background in neuroscience, in addition to literature for buying novels like American Psycho, and Virgin Suicides. But there's a lot of molecules which are being researched a lot, like the terpenes that are anti-cancer and anti-anxiety and antihypertensive. CBG is antihypertensive for blood pressure, where CBD is not. It's actually just anti-anxiety. But CBG, THC, and CBD are derived from CBG. But the CBG could be isolated the same way CBD is and the same way THC is. And the terpenes are also very valuable. So there could be blends where they actually analyze the terpene content, the various terpenes, and what actual health benefits there would be, even for longevity.
Yeah, this is very established science. This is like crazy that we're even having the conversation around descheduling. It's totally crazy, and it's now legal in 20 plus states. And everyone's, we're financing schools. It's built into the taxes are built into the budgets. It's the ship has passed. We're just waiting for everybody else to catch up.
Right. What's the lab testing like in Massachusetts?
Oh, fanatical, and then fine. Massachusetts is like a great market, a terror market. It's highly enforced and it's highly regulated, but it's also the Cannabis Control Commission there is having a very difficult time. I mean, ultimately, you kind of hope that you want those commissions to be supporting these businesses and helping you meet regulatory hurdles or checkboxes, not providing hurdles. I think some of these commissions are finding that they like to cause more problems versus help you work through them to meet the challenges that they require. And we're having some issues, but it's everybody here knows what it's like to be in cannabis, and it's just the single most brutal space I can possibly imagine. I literally don't know anything that's more challenging.
When I started working, I was so surprised to learn that cannabis is not chill at all. It is not relaxed or...
No. I mean, honestly, it has made working in Hollywood for 30 years feel like totally like, oh, this is so easy. You can make money in Hollywood. Cannabis, there's a whole nother... whole nother level. I
High
mean, even
octane.
when you look at like 280E with, what these, none of these MSOs are even paying 280E anymore. They're just holding it, hoping that it gets rescheduled and taking the risk that they're going to pay the 6% VIG, which is less than which is like a point differential between what they're making on their interest accounts or what they'd be paying in penalties. I mean, it's like, what other business is like, we're not going to pay our taxes because we hope it'll be federally changed and we're willing to pay the interest and the penalties simply because our math works out better. I mean, it's just crazy.
Sounds like financing a film.
Financing a film is so much easier than that. It's
Well,
even
I don't know about that.
it's an amazing thing to witness from the inside out.
Well, as we wrap up here, I would love to just know what you think the most radical act of self-expression that you've ever committed is.
Oh, I mean, look, the Hanleys are so aligned with what I'm about to say, I don't even need their permission to say it. Magic is only found when you try things that might fail. And you have to take huge swings. Spring Breakers is obviously a great example of something where they found real magic, where a lot of people thought, and even I'm sure on the performances, that these things could be too big or too broad, and that it was totally dialed in. You've got to take big risks, and you have to be totally okay if it doesn't work. And I know the Hanleys have done that their entire career. I've followed that, and that's what I try to do as an actor. And in business, I think there's ways in which you can set that up where you protect your investors and you protect your brand, and you take some big leaps that, God willing, inshallah, Baruch Hashem, land in the right place.
Wow. Any final words from you?
Oh, I'm just going to, afterwards cut the deal.
The Spring Breakers deal?
Yeah.
It sounds like that
And
strain
maybe
might be
the
called
casting,
Alien.
right?
It's gonna be no stress,
Right.
someone that, Johnson's actually done 2 of our movies.
Right. It sounds like you could start with like a home grow to grow out the genetics, figure out the strain. Maybe it's called Alien. Maybe you're growing
Well,
it
maybe we'll have a couple different versions. The alien one will be the one that takes you off the planet.
to the moon.
But
Yeah,
we'll
I'm a
have the
father, so I'm
earthly
more interested in
realm.
dad grass at this point,
Oh, dad grass?
I'm a father of 2. Like, the product these days, very strong, very strong.
So you're not dabbing.
There's no dab. Even one of these guys out here with the moon rocks or whatever, I'm like, oh my God, I think it would kill me.
Have you tried dabbing or moon rocks?
No,
Do you know?
I haven't.
Moon
No.
rocks, that sounds pretty good. Well, I can guarantee that, whatever we put out will be the strongest. That I'm not worried
Chris
about.
is kind of a one-pump kind of
I
guy.
could get, don't worry about, how high it's going to get you. That's not really the issue. I'm going to have to dial it back, actually.
It's going to blast you into outer space.
Chris is kind of a one-puff kind of guy.
Yeah,
Maybe
but
2
that one
puffs.
puff, man, is like...
That one puff, that one brownie.
Mary Jane, thanks for having us today.
Thank you so
You
much
did
for
a great
this
job.
great
Thank you.
conversation. It was really
Nice to
lovely to
meet
meet you.
you.
Thank you all for joining us.
Yes.
And see you out there.